We were absolutely thrilled when we got word from the churchwide organization that Bishop Yehiel Curry was going to be our churchwide representative. I want to tell you a little bit about him. Yes, please, absolutely. I actually don't know how common this is, but when we fill out, you may not know this, but we actually do request different churchwide folks to come to synods, and every year for us, the presiding bishop is number one on the list. I'm imagining we're not the only ones that do that. This year, we came up 3 cherries, I guess, so we're lucky to have you. We're super glad you're here, Bishop. Yeah. Presiding Bishop Yehiel Curry is a passionate preacher, bridge builder, and faithful companion to communities living through disruption and change. Serving as bishop of the Metropolitan Chicago Synod of the ELCA, Bishop Curry was known for his joyful proclamation of the gospel, his deep commitment to justice and reconciliation, and his insistence that God is present and at work precisely where life feels most fragile. Born and raised on the south side of Chicago, Bishop Curry's ministry has been shaped by urban neighborhoods, grassroots organizing, and a fierce love for young people and families. Before his election as bishop, he served as mission developer and pastor of Shekinah Chapel. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Okay. Shekinah Chapel Lutheran Church, a multicultural, multi-generational congregation rooted in proclamation, hospitality, and community engagement. His leadership has included mentoring emerging leaders, nurturing innovative ministries, and walking alongside congregations as they discern how to be church in changing times. Nebraska Synod, please welcome Presiding Bishop Yehiel Curry.
Thank you.
And I told the bishop before we got into the questions, I'd give him a couple minutes just to say hello and whatever he wants to say. So the floor is yours.
Greetings. It is an honor and privilege to be with you. I think the one thing I want to leave with you is that in all my years in the Lutheran Church, which I did not join until around 1998, I never missed a Synod assembly. And I say that because I was learning so much about the church, and I could always meet new people. I'm more like many of you in the sense that I was just a guy sitting in the pew of a ministry just trying to do my part. I'm not somebody who discerned at a young age that I wanted or I needed or I was being called to be a pastor. I knew I wanted to do something. I knew I wanted to give back. And so I started out in social work. And I remember going to a school where there was a bad accident and meeting the families who were involved in this incident that happened with another child and thinking, perhaps I should be in the school. And because when I went to college, I majored in psychology, but I had a minor in secondary education, that next semester, that school that I was at, I was their 6th grade teacher. And while looking for resources for those kids in that school, I happened on a Lutheran church, St. Stephen's Lutheran Church on the south side of Chicago, because they had a camping program where they were taking kids to Camp Iwalu in Strawberry Point, Iowa. And I sat in on that meeting, and they had a worship service, and I stayed, not knowing that it was a Lutheran church. The leader of that meeting in that ministry ended up leaving, and they were in the process of trying to become a synodically authorized worshiping community. That story ends with the bishop asking me, saying what we all hear, I see something in you, and asked me to consider being a mission developer, and I did what every great Christian leader should do. I said no. For 2 years. Because I thought in my mind, they must not know who I really am. This isn't me. But there was nothing I could do about it. I felt myself being drawn closer and closer and closer, and that's how I ended up into the Lutheran Church. The bishop said, if you don't do it, the ministry will close. And so I went as an obligation to this group that was forming, that I fell in love with. And so the rest is history. So as we enter into these questions, I say to you, I'm still a mission developer at heart. That's how I approach my work. That's how I see myself in the office. And I'm still somebody who is drawn to the youth and the young adults. And so that's what I would share. Thanks.
Yeah. I think you're going to get a lot to that tonight. So yeah, we asked the Synod to submit some questions, and some of these I'm sure you've heard before, but let's start with this one. In your first year, well, first however many months it's been now as presiding bishop, what has surprised you and what has brought you the greatest joy?
All right, the surprise is, and this isn't just for bishops, it's not just for pastors and deacons, it's for all of us in vocation. Sometimes it could be a pretty lonely place. And when you have centered yourself around building ministry, you typically attract people who are like you, and they end up being your community. And so with every transition from the parish to the local bishop office for Metropolitan Chicago Synod, there's always been this reboot, restarting of that inner circle. And I think it might have hit me like 90 days ago that the circle that I had formed over the last 6 years, that it had totally changed. And I had this sense of like, who's my community? And I struggle with that. And so that was one of the surprising things for me, having built these unique communities that I found myself about 90 days ago asking the question, like, where do I fit in? One of the things that I've been really excited about is there are some talented people, not only at the church-wide office, but in our communities and our synods. Whenever I travel, I am just amazed at the things I hear and I learn. I'm inspired. I told somebody I haven't had to come up with a new idea in 10 years because I take them all from you. I mean, think about this. Like, people are always saying, have you thought about this? Would you try this? What about this? And I end up doing it, and people think it's all me, and I have to tell them, no, I haven't come up with a new idea in 10 years. People send me stuff, and they ask me, and somehow, foolishly, I try it. We are immensely talented. I think that there's something shaking beneath the surface. For me, there's a spirit of optimism. I wake up every morning excited about the possibilities. When you are called, yes, there are disappointments, but when there's a calling, you still wake up the next day full of hope. And that's what's been happening to me, and I've been surprised every morning that I'm still excited about this work. Thank you.
Yeah. I told you. The next one came in, and I'm going to amend it a little bit. What do you believe the wider church could learn from small congregations and rural communities And I'm going to amend that a little bit because I know a little bit about the synod that you served prior to being elected presiding bishop that I think would surprise a lot of the people here. So maybe, especially in what you learned from your time in Metro Chicago, what do you think small congregations might be able to teach the wider church?
Resistance. There are just things about how we continue to function that the wider church needs to hear. Ministry happens each and every day. Somebody takes a key and unlock the door and deal with the alarm, and somebody's printing the bulletins, and someone's reaching out to the children for the acolytes. These things are happening each and every day thanks to our lay leaders. In many ways, we're catching up. I tell people all the time, I don't believe that there is a pastor or deacon shortage. What happened is right after the pandemic, we had a group of about 200 who decided that, you know what, my time is past. I'm not going to be a televangelist. I don't want to be speaking on Facebook and things like that. So there was a group who left, and what happens is as the groups move up, that bottom tier, we weren't producing as many through the seminary, so it created some gaps. And now other larger congregations are having to learn what small and rural communities and congregations have been doing forever and ever, and that's taking inventory of who's sitting in the pew, finding out where their gifts align and what it is that they're able to do and they want to do. Ministry happens. If somebody doesn't show up, I'm amazed at how often someone else just steps up and make things happen. So that's the one thing that I've always loved and appreciated about our smaller and our rural congregations, that we just make things happen. No excuses. We go to work and we live for another week, another month. Sometimes the larger we are so used to those systems being in place and those roles being in place, and we don't have the kind of flexibility that I've seen in the smaller congregations. So,
yeah. What would you say just the average congregation in the Metro Chicago Synod in your time there? I think people in Nebraska have a picture of what an urban synod would look like. I don't think we've got the right picture. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
I think you naturally have your larger congregations, but on an average Sunday, you're talking to 50 to 75 people sitting in a pew. I'll talk more about the ministry that I helped to start, African American, all first-generation Lutheran on the south side of Chicago. Most would come in and would tell you they have no idea what a Lutheran is. It was by design. We said Shekinah Chapel, and when they got into new members class, they would learn that it's Shekinah Chapel Lutheran Church. My philosophy was make it easy to get in and hard to get out. True story now. Listen, people will quit on a denomination any day, but it's really difficult to quit on a friend. And so we would always try to make friends, and they'd have to be there 3 weeks before new members class start, and they get there and they say, "We Lutheran." Yep. And so, but in Metropolitan Chicago Synod, we had 165 congregations, and the diversity was a good mix, but Chicago proper, on average, we had 50 to 75 congregations with 50 to 75 members operating like many in the rural do, making things happen, having amazing lay leaders who volunteer their time, who are the heartbeat of the Synod that makes things happen. So, yeah.
Thank you. I like this one. I'm not sure who submitted it, but what is one thing you pack for all of your trips that we might be surprised to learn about?
So in the dollar section, there's this spray that's supposed to work to unwrinkle your clothes. Like today was this day. I got to tell you guys this story. Like my plane was 2.5 hours late because they put too much gasoline in the plane. So we call them crop dusters in Chicago. Whenever I go to O'Hare and I'm going somewhere, I always look at the seat chart and I want to know how big the plane is. But this is a true story. It's too much gas. So they had to go through this long process of taking the gas out. And I was 2 hours late. And all I could worry about was my vestments. What am I going to do about my vestments? So I went back to the room and I took the bottle out and then I put it on and they were still wrinkled. So that's one of the things I pack. It's psychological for me. I've never seen it work. But I'm told you just spray it on there and the wrinkles are supposed to fall off. And yeah. You'll see it now. You don't know what I'm talking about. But now you will go and see it and you will buy one. Tag me in the post, please.
What spiritual practices are sustaining you in your work?
All right, I'm going to talk about one, and it's important. I live about an hour and 15 minutes from the office. I've been unique in the sense that all of my ministries, the base have been Chicago, but this is further north. And so that I could have the time I need in the office before people arrive, I have to be on the road by 5:50 a.m. so that I could get there in 45 minutes. And typically, what I'm doing between 7 and 8 is meditation. I have a private area just adjacent to the office, and I have a notepad. And I think I remember all of the ideas that you told me to try during that moment. Because for that hour, I'm just writing things down. I'm listening to music, I'm praying, it's gospel music, and occasionally I'll get up and I'll write something down. And that has really sustained me. And I transfer the things from that pad to a whiteboard that's in a larger office. And I'm seeing that as the lens through my week, through my month. And that's typically 3 to 4 days a week. That's how my morning starts. Meditation and prayer has just been my go-to since I started in October.
Oh, yeah. Well, related to what you just said, you talked about music. If you had to describe your call right now as presiding bishop by naming one song or hymn, what might it be?
There was a blues song called My Last $2. I was going to say that, but there's a song. Many of you might not know that I spent my childhood in the Catholic Church. And the name of the song is Pass It On. It's a song that I always sing in my head when I'm driving because I love the words that says, it only takes a spark to get a fire going. And soon are those around, it warms up till it's glowing. But that's how it is with God's love. Once you experience it, spread His love to everyone you want to pass it on. So it's always the spark. It's always a small thing that someone says. It's always that little thing that catches my attention that ends up being this big thing. So that song, Pass It On, for me, it's just something that I always hum in the back of my mind. It's something that I always sing. I feel like it's one of the first songs I learned in that Catholic church.
Nice. That's going to do well here. We got a lot of people that love camp here, so
right.
you knew that. What would you say well, the question says younger people. I would just say people. What would you say to people who care deeply about and want experiences of faith, justice, and community, but are not sure the church is where they will find those things?
So you should know that, again, I'm one of 11 children. I have 3 adult daughters who, when I say yes to ministry, this is a long route to the question. I'll tell you about my oldest daughter, who's now a pastor. But when she was 16, she got up in church and said, I was really disappointed when my dad said yes to the ministry. And in her own way, what she was trying to say was that, you know, they weren't consulted. There was no part of my brain, no part of my upbringing that says before you say yes to the ministry, you should talk to your children. And so that was a learning for me. And that's the bigger question. How often are we consulting? And so I changed that day. And to the young adults, I'll tell you what I said to my children in the ministry. You should know that when I started leading Shekinah Chapel, I started leading in the year 2007 as a lay mission developer. That means I was a lay person going to school and leading the church, trying to grow it. I was ordained in 2009. That ministry in 2012 became an official congregation. In 2012, we were worshiping 200 people. Of the 200 people, about 120 were 18 and younger. We were all young with young children. Here's the message. We don't have the answers that you might be looking for, but you have the answers we need. Too often, I think we're waiting for those of us with gray specks in our beards to talk about what it might be like.
Yeah.
For youth and young adults, when the reality is it's always been you. We're waiting on you to tell us, here's how we're gathering. Here's a unique idea I have. Here's something that I've been thinking about. And I think that's where some of the tension is. We're not the experts on that. You are. You can tell us more about what's happening and how people are gathering than we can. So I need you to be tenacious with people like myself and making sure that you're heard and you have spaces and that you can articulate a vision of how youth and young adults your age are gathering.
Yeah. And I think also, I remember way back when Nadia Boltz-Weber first started posting about being a pastor. Do you remember when she wrote in her book about what they would say to new members of their congregation?
I just remember she had a shirt on that says, "They're not coming." Whenever people said, "When are the youth going to come to our church?" She would point at her shirt. She said, "Youth bring youth," right?
Yeah.
So that was one of the. That's why I started smiling.
Well,
but what was?
She used to say when they would welcome new members into their congregation, some version of "Welcome to this community of believers. We're so glad you're here. We're going to disappoint you," and just be honest that and to the young people's to the question as it was asked, I would also say it's going to be there if you bring it. But it's also a community that is going to disappoint you because we're all going to disappoint one another sooner or later. But that tenacious piece that I think you brought in is a huge part of that, is we also hang in there with each other. And that's what it also means to be church.
Can I add this one thing? And
Yeah.
I know this may not reach everyone, but one of the things my daughter did was advocated for the youth. And they came up with a concept that I really wasn't a fan of. But I said yes. And it was called a holy hip hop service, by which they would take the readings and they would put together first reading, second reading, and gospel, and they would form it in spoken word. And it was one of the highlights. They would have a Friday night, once a month service. That's not something I ever would have come up with. I was terrified every Friday night about what might be spoken, but it's what they lifted up. I think a second example is today at that church, it's not something I did, but they have a barber shop. They turned the computer lab into a barber shop. The computer lab I built. That's another story. So clearly that's not something I would have come up with, but the youth and the young adults said, what if we created this atmosphere? And they do all kind of events there, but it's a barber shop, and before service and after service, that's where you can find the youth and young adults. And so it's those type of ideas that they were lifting up that really kind of took on a new way. So.
Yeah. What is one thing you wish congregations would stop doing because it drains energy from mission? And what is one thing you hope congregations would do to follow where God is leading them?
We are in a day and time where we really have to start developing the next level of leadership for our church. Now, I need you to know that in some cases we've been the problem. We've gotten a great leader from a small church. They go to seminary, tell them not to go back to that church, right? And what happens, it creates a void. Well, times are different now, where we now have to start creating leadership development programs. I call them apprenticeship programs within our context. And we don't need permission for that. We need to figure out how we might be able to cultivate every aspect of our ministry and develop a leadership development component that speaks to our survival. Because each context is different. So this idea that we're waiting on a master unique program isn't going to happen. It's going to be you deciding, here's what we need at this place, this location, and figuring out what it looks like to get the next generation equipped or the next person equipped. So there isn't a magic program. Some things work over here, some things work over there, but each context is different. So that's one of the things that I would lift up. I also, people give to things they can participate in. People support what they help to create. If they're able to share in the vision, then they don't mind sharing in the burden. And so we need to start widening the table and crafting visions based on the collective versus the few. And so people don't mind giving to things that they help to create and support. It's just difficult if it feels like it comes from top down. So what we have to start doing is really starting from a larger base. I'm not necessarily talking about a grassroots or bottom up, but sometimes there are different ideas and projects that we can get larger buy-in if we open. It may take longer, but as long as we could share the vision, when things become rough, I've learned that people would be willing to share the burden.
When you are out, as you are this weekend, in a synod as presiding bishop, or in a congregation or a place you've never been before, what are you hoping to notice, or what are you hoping to learn?
What was the preacher name last year?
Kate.
Kate,
Yeah.
right? All
Yeah.
right. All right. I'm always amazed at just sometimes the small things. I learned that Kate was the preacher last year, and now I'm curious about how lay preaching works. I'm curious about how are they trained, how are they developed. In many cases, I'm learning from some conversations, it could be one-to-one, leader to leader. Sometimes it could be a cohort of leaders. How it operates here, don't necessarily assume that it's operating somewhere else. And so I always take back to the church-wide office or to the next visit things that I've learned in the current context. I am blown away that this is a Saturday and Sunday. What amazing opportunity it is for the body of Christ to know that we're doing our business in our worship, but also there's another component for some who aren't here, back in those contexts. Something has to happen. Someone's working, someone's doing some things. And so I'm really blown away by it. I'm so inspired by it. I'm so encouraged by it. And I'm going to be counting heads to see how many people are still here on Sunday. I mean, it's a big deal, guys. It is really huge for me. This is my first time experiencing this. And I've already been texting about it, about, hey, this is another concept. This is something that we should be documenting and sharing about how we are truly the priesthood of all believers. So it's always the small thing that someone says that gets me. Yeah. Those are the stories that I try and take back.
What are the biggest questions you think the church is facing right now?
Yeah. I think we're a different church today. And I heard during Bishop's sermon some of those questions of this is the way we've always done it. Our question is this fear of what does it mean to step into the unknown? What does it mean to go from familiar to faith? The land of familiar are things that we've been doing for a long time. Faith is things that we just don't know how it's going to turn out. So what does it mean to try something that isn't necessarily normal in our context? And so I understand that. I get it. I appreciate it. But I think that's one of the things that we've been wrestling with. How are we changing as a church, and what do we need to do to fit this change? I think those are some of the things that we're wrestling with. And trust me, people in the pews have some answers. We have to start talking about it. We aren't the experts. I just know that these are some of the questions we're wrestling with.
I promise I didn't write this question. I am a little worried that somebody on the Synod staff did. What do you see as the most important work of bishops and Synod staff in this season of the church?
Well, my go-to has always been relationships. It was one of the things I still do today is I just show up in a church. I won't get to do it here, but whenever I'm in a city, I ask the Synod for a list of 20 places. And then I show up to one and I sit. And normally it takes people a while because I don't wear my cross and things. And I just sit there and enjoy worship. But it's the relational piece that I'm able to observe and figure out what is unique about this place. And in many cases, I've been leading, and I rarely get the opportunity to be. And so I think the important work is our relationship that allows us to just be able to see how things are going, to see how things are moving in this context. I do think our second thing is to inspire. And we inspire not by giving you some secret document that tells you how to turn things around. We inspire by sharing what's happening on the other side of the Synod. We inspire by sharing what's happening in another Synod. We inspire by lifting up the gifts that are happening even among us. So it is the relationships and inspiration, I think, is the unique work we have.
You keep setting up natural segues for questions. It's kind of nice. What has inspired you lately?
I have a amazing family, guys. It's been a difficult. I see me and you, so I'm talking about me, and I know this is out there in you. This has been a difficult season personally to be elected presiding bishop. So some health challenges within the family, some deaths, and through it all, just had some amazing support from my family. That when I'm traveling, I feel prayed for. I feel connected. We try and talk every night, and that has been a big time inspiration for me. On the work side of things, I've asked us to do some things that are a little bit different, and people have responded. The church-wide office has recently returned to in person 2 days a week. We hadn't returned in person since the pandemic. And so those who are within 50 miles are coming back into the office 2 days a week. And it's a different routine, especially if you were hired remote. And people, although it's an adjustment, has been really great with responding to that. And that's been really inspirational to me. I've got to say, guys, I feel like I've been given a fair shake. I feel like I've been given an opportunity by those who work at the church-wide office, my colleague bishops, and that's also something that I really do appreciate.
What's been a remarkable experience that you're still processing, or something that's blown your mind?
A couple things. I went to Palestine in January before everything happened, and we were able to participate in the bishop installation of Ahmad Haddad. I don't have words for what it's like to be in the home of one of our siblings or to go to one of the schools. It's just really, really, it was just an awesome experience, and all of our partners from the Lutheran World Federation made the trip, and we were there to celebrate what was unfolding with this new bishop in the Holy Land. There is a person at the churchwide office who works in the development office who goes by Ali. Ali is a Muslim. And I asked him, how did he come to work at the churchwide office? He said, I'm from Palestine. I went to Lutheran grammar school and high school. Every child in Palestine dreams of coming here one day and being able to work for the church that sustained us. He came here and sought out the ELCA for work because what had happened over there with our gifts, with our mission support. I think the last one is I was able to go to South Africa and to be with our Lutheran siblings there, myself and other bishops who have companion synods in South Africa. And we were all able to come together as one big family. Can I tell you that the average worship service went 7 hours? We were there for 7 days, and we probably had 5 worship services, one of which I preached at. And it was only 3 hours before I got to preach. But what I enjoyed most was the Spirit flowed, and if at one moment they just felt like singing, they would sing, and that song might go for 45 minutes. It was just, it's something unlike anything I've been a part of, just where people pack up their cars and they go and they were just there to worship. And it was the 50th anniversary for the Evangelical Lutheran Church of South Africa. That's what we were there to celebrate. Or was it 75th? It was one of those. But people had come from all over South Africa, and they were just there. And it was just really amazing. Barbecuing outside and hanging out. It was just really amazing. So those are some of the experiences that talks about our global reach, that talks about our connection. Yeah. That was really inspiring.
Did you ever think you'd sit down with the King of Jordan?
No, never, ever. And it was just remarkable. Again, sometimes we underestimate what we're doing here. We underestimate the value and our reach around the globe. But when you go and you end up in the palace for the King of Jordan, and they know you, and they know your work, and they know what we've been doing. I mean, you just sit back and you just appreciate it. Yeah. When those unique cars pull up to take you to the palace, and you're in the special room with the king's special chocolates. And of course, you have to try all of them. I mean, you know, that they're there for that reason. And then you start talking like, this is the way you live. Like, I really like that one over there. Give me a couple more of those. and I mean, it just was an amazing opportunity, but it's really about what we've been doing here. Yeah. The king didn't know my name, but he knew the ELCA. Yeah. He knew our work. He knew our reach. He knew our support for the baptismal font that we hope to fund in Jordan. So thank you.
Yeah.
No, but I never would have imagined that.
What's your dream for what God is up to in the world?
Here's why I'm a little hesitant. I'll speak of a dream, but I need you to know that I see my primary role as lifting up what you said you want. I've talked to everyone that my focus in 2026 is connection. In 2027 is sustainability. In 2028 it's reforming. Those three things are my goals because we lifted it up in the church-wide assembly 6-7 years ago, saying that these were priorities of ours. And since this was one of our priorities, I want to make sure that what we said we wanted to do, we can do. But I really have a dream of a lay revolution happening within this church. I was telling someone earlier that there was a time where you had Lutheran grammar school and the kids would go from Lutheran grammar school to Lutheran high school and then Lutheran high school to Lutheran college and then they would go to seminary. Well, when those schools started closing, we lost our pipeline. But I know where the pipeline starts today. Our congregations. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what it becomes, but I hope to look back 10 to 15 years from now and say that was the moment, that was the time that we started investing. 3 years ago, we started something called Lay Day in the Metropolitan Chicago Synod. I know it's cheesy, but it rolls off the tongue. You won't be able to forget it, Lay Day. And what happened is the late leaders would give us ideas of workshops they wanted, whether it was on entrepreneurship, conflict resolution, how to be an effective counsel, volunteerism, and we would go out and we'd find leaders, and for a day, our lay leaders would get to participate in these workshops based on the things that they'd chosen to make themselves better. And so my dream really is about how many baptized members here in the Senate?
75,000.
75,000. Sometimes, unconsciously, we could focus on the 1,000. I want us to be intentional about focusing on the 75,000. So that's my dream.
Yeah. I'm going to take time for two more, I think. What would you like to ask of us?
I've said this to the bishops. I've said this to church-wide staff, and I'll say it to you. We're at a unique time. And I want you to give your church another shot. I need you to know that I want to be in relationship with you. I want you to give us another opportunity. Lift up your ideas, your dreams, your goals. Continue your support. Because we're in a day and time where we need you. We want to be in relationship with you. And so I'm asking just for an opportunity. Let's dream together. Let's do this together. So that's the one thing I would say. Have an open mind, have an open heart, and let's just give this another try. And I think we can. I think we can do some great things together. Thanks.
Last question. How can we in the Nebraska Synod support and pray for you and pray for our siblings in the church-wide organization?
When given the opportunity, I would say, for me, it's just showing up. Showing up and being the body of Christ. I want you, and these words are important to me, assume good intentions. If something comes out from the church-wide office or the Synod office and it doesn't feel right, what you could do is assume good intentions. I want you to assume that the hearts were right when it was crafted. Maybe it didn't land well. Maybe it wasn't delivered well, but I want you to assume good intentions. Because that's the starting point for a unique reversal. I need for us to assume that Christ was in the midst of it. Maybe we could say it differently, we can do it differently, but I need you to assume that however it was created, that our hearts and minds were on Christ.
Thank you. Thank you. Another round of applause, please. And now I bring out the binder of death to let you all know what comes next. So, again, we're so glad to have you with us, Bishop. We will be back tomorrow to hear from you from your first keynote. Bishop Curry also has a couple of workshops during our time together. I have been telling the staff, and some of you have also heard this, how excited I was that Bishop Curry was coming, because this is the person I have been privileged to briefly experience in the conference. We're thankful for your leadership, and we're thankful for your presence here this weekend.